It all started with a 67 Corvette in Stowe, Ohio. Before Amazon, before overnight shipping, there was Summit Racing. How did Paul Sergey transform his small side hustle slanging hot rod parts from a donut shop basement to a worldwide juggernaut that supplies car, truck, and off-road enthusiasts with the latest and greatest parts for their ride, while becoming one of the biggest supporters in numerous aspects of motorsport? In this episode of Rubberneck Radio, we will dive into the story of Summit Racing Equipment. Welcome back, everyone, to this episode of Rubberneck Radio. I'm your host, Scott Long. I'm excited to share this story about Summit Racing Equipment. This is going to be a fun episode because even if you're remotely into cars and working on cars, you've probably heard of Summit Racing. I've been to the HQ in Talmadge, and this place is massive. It was cool to see the drag cars and stock cars on display overlooking thousands of parts and accessories. All right. It's 1968, Akron, Ohio, the rubber capital of the world. Drag racing is in full swing and muscle cars rumbling down every street. In his garage, Paul Sergey, a car guy through and through, just picked up a 1967 Corvette with a 427 under the hood. But Paul wasn't just flexing it on the streets. He started doing what a lot of us probably wish we had thought to do. He began selling performance parts to his buddies, and not just a few parts here and there. He saw real demand. Guys wanted to go faster, louder, meaner, and Paul was the plug. So I've done a bit of research, and there wasn't too much we know about Sergey. We know that he's from the Akron Talmadge area, and according to the Akron Beacon Journal that was updated on June 6, 2018, Sergey does not grant interviews. A company spokesman, Alan Rebsher, was stated to say he doesn't want the spotlight on himself. Where does a grassroots performance part business go from there? Well, in Paul's case, it went underground, literally. He opened a shop in a basement of a donut shop, which is hilarious and amazing. I wonder if they ran any specials where if you buy a carburetor, you get a free half dozen donuts. The place became kind of a secret headquarters for speed. Word spread fast. And by 1969, just a year later, Summit Racing opened its first official storefront in Cuyahoga Falls. Picture this, 1,500 square feet, only 20 feet wide, sandwiched between a Midas muffler and a pizza joint. That's it. Yet, this tiny storefront became the local go-to for performance parts. All right, it's 1970 now. That new shop in Cuyahoga Falls, way too small now. Summit Racing was growing fast, so they leveled up and moved into a bigger storefront, this time in Akron, Ohio. At this point, the name was starting to carry some weight. If you were a gearhead in Northeast Ohio, you knew where to go if you needed the good stuff. We're talking Holley carbs, Mallory ignitions, Hirsch shifters, all the names that made hot rods hotter. Summit wasn't just a local shop anymore. It was becoming a destination. Stuff your buddy swore by because his dad ran it in his Chevelle. Now fast forward 2 years. It's 1972 and Paul and the team saw the future. They realized if people were driving across counties to get to the store, why not just bring the store to them? So Summit Racing went mail order. And how'd they get the word out? Magazines. The holy grail of car culture back then. Hot rod, carcraft. Suddenly, you didn't have to live in Ohio to get Summit parts. They were just shipping across country. This wasn't just smart, it was revolutionary for the time. They saw the national appetite for performance and served it up, one envelope at a time. Like imagine checking your mailbox and seeing that envelope. It's not bills, it's not junk, it's a camshaft, headers, and a world of possibilities wrapped in brown paper and tape. Then comes 1974, and things hit another level. Summit opened their second store because one wasn't enough to handle the demand anymore. And more importantly, this year was the year that they dropped their first catalog. Not just any catalog, though. This was the Big Book. It became legendary. It wasn't just parts and catalog. It was basically The Big Book might as well been your bedtime reading. You'd circle parts that you wanted like a Sears catalog before Christmas. Heck, we still do that. And let's be real, some of you older listeners still have one stashed in your garage right now, probably next to a box of old spark plugs and a timing light that doesn't work. I mean, think about it. By 1976, they established a sales call line. This was pre-Amazon, pre-internet, pre-add to cart. You weren't clicking your way to a crate motor. You were filling out order forms, calling part numbers out loud, and hoping the guy on the other end of the line could ship it before next race day. Summit made it work. They were early to the game when it came time to scaling smart. All right, by 1976, Summit Racing had completely outgrown its humble beginnings. The little shop in Akron, it couldn't handle the traffic anymore. The mail orders were stacking up and the phones were ringing off the hook. Guys weren't just buying parts, they were building whole cars off what Summit shipped out. So what do you do when demand gets that high? You go big. And that's exactly what Summit did. They moved into a new multi-building warehouse setup, 4 buildings actually. And this was a major move. See, it wasn't about flexing square footage. This was about efficiency. The idea was simple. Stock more parts, cut down wait times, get people what they needed fast. And that warehouse system, it worked. Now, in 1980, Summit Racing didn't just sell parts. They built their first project car, the Elite Enterprise Laser 917. Here's the rundown. Chassis and body, built from the Elite Laser 917 kit modeled after the iconic Porsche 917 race car. Mounted on a fiberglass body attached to a Volkswagen Beetle chassis. Ditching the standard VW air-cooled 4, Summit dropped in a Buick 231 cubic inch V6, complete with 4-wheel drive, X-body cradle, and drivetrain. The result? A stout mid-engine setup, no more puny Beetle power. This build was featured in CarCraft's magazine February 1981 issue, showcasing Summit's move from retailer to builder. Imagine ordering your parts from Summit, then seeing their own V6 powered kit car rolling into a car magazine. That's some next level PR and bona fide credibility. This also helps set up the current landscape that we see today with speed shops and car builders putting together a build for events like SEMA. Now, they'd been putting out the big book since the mid-70s, but in 87, they took a massive leap. Instead of releasing it once or twice a year, they cranked it up to 6 times a year. That meant every 2 months, gearheads across the country were getting a fresh catalog full of updated prices, new parts, and the latest performance tech. And honestly, that was genius. Remember, this was before websites, before instant updates. If pricing changed mid-year and you didn't update your catalog, you're going to get angry phone calls. And let's be real, car guys will call you out if you advertise a carburetor for $179 and then try to charge $219. Summit got ahead of it. Not only that, these frequent drops help them stay ahead of trends. New Hurst shifter hits the market, it's in the next catalog. All right, now we're at 1988, and this is where Summit Racing makes a move that would change its identity forever. They go racing. Not just selling parts to racers, actually putting their name on the door. Enter Bill Coleman. If you know drag racing history, that name probably makes your left eye twitch a little bit, in a good way. Coleman was one of the baddest dudes in pro stock and in pro mod. And in 1988, he became the first driver sponsored by Summit Racing Equipment. And they didn't just throw a logo on the car, they backed a legend. Coleman was fast, fearless, and just the kind of guy who made people lean over the fence at the drag strip. He would go on to be the first door slammer driver to break 200 miles an hour in the quarter mile. Coleman was quoted, "We didn't go out there to play games. We went out there to break barriers." Let's talk about Coleman for a moment. Here, Coleman is from Missouri. On March 14th, 1987, he broke the 200-mile barrier in a full-bodied door slammer by going 202.24 miles an hour in his top sport Camaro at Darlington Dragway. He was also the innovator of slapping a massive wing on the back for improved traction, tossing in NOS in a 615 cubic inch engine and employing two parachutes to help stop drag cars. Coleman raced for Summit for 12 seasons. Now we're in 1990, and Summit Racing is all in on growth. But this year, they didn't just expand the warehouse, they expanded access. This is the year Summit launched their 24/7 ordering and customer service line. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If it was 2 a.m. and you were elbows deep in a small block rebuild and realized you forgot to order gaskets, Summit had you. No more waiting until Monday. You could call, talk to a real person, and get your parts on the way. That move alone separated them from pretty much every other parts supplier out there. But that's not all. This was also the debut of Summit's first ever centerfold in their catalog. And the car they picked? An absolute icon. That first car was a tube frame 1960 Corvette with a 406 small block making around 700 horsepower on nitrous. The street-driven car ran mid-nines in the quarter mile, and garage walls around the world rejoiced. So it's 1992 now, and Summit Racing is shifting into a whole new gear. With their catalog going out 6 times a year, 24/7 phone lines buzzing, and demand for parts skyrocketing, the old setup wasn't cutting it anymore. So what did they do? They built a new headquarters, a proper full-scale operation in Talmadge, Ohio. And this just wasn't some office upgrade. The new facility spanned an impressive 96,000 square feet. That's warehouse, customer service, retail showroom, all under one roof. 96,000 square feet. That's about the size of 2 football fields it housed in a massive distribution center to speed up order fulfillment, a retail showroom that quickly became a destination, and expanded tech support and customer service center that kept those 24/7 lines buzzing. During this time, Summit continues to grow their support in motorsport. It's the early 90s now. Summit increased their presence in IHRA and outlaw drag racing scenes. Summit backs more independent racers running in pro mod and top sportsmen. Still grassroots, but expanding steadily. They began supporting small teams with contingency programs, free gear, discounts, and visibility in exchange for running the Summit logo. In '94, Summit becomes a recognized brand at major drag events. NHRA national events began featuring Summit-supported drivers more frequently. Growth of regional event sponsorship, swap meets, and bracket racing. Also in '94, the Quadraduce was built and was the brainchild of Summit Racing R&D chief Mark Stillo. This purple and yellow beast had a 406 Chevy aluminum block engine, 6-speed Borg-Warner transmission, 110-inch wheelbase. It was a Frankenstein car with parts taken from a GMC Cyclone, C4 Corvette, 1932 Ford, and Porsche 930. The Quadraduce would make its rounds in the magazines such as Hot Rod, Street Rodder, Car and Driver, and Street Machine. It would go on to see 3 versions. Version 1 from 95 to 2000, version 2 from 2000 to 2015, and version 3 from 2015 to present. Its current home is in Helena, Montana. In 95 to 96, Summit started sponsoring NHRA sportsman classes. Summit launches programs aimed at Superstock, Stock, Super Gas, and Super Comp drivers. These aren't just big-name pros. They're the weekend warriors and bracket racers, the locals. Brand visibility explodes thanks to race trailers, signage, and contingency decals showing up at tracks all over the U.S. All right, now we're in 1998, and Summit Racing is ready to go national and establish its footprint on the doorstep of the West Coast car scene. They opened a brand new 150,000 square foot distribution center and retail store in Sparks, Nevada. This thing is massive compared to the 96,000 square foot headquarters in Talmadge. Why Sparks? It's simple. Logistics. It gave Summit a launchpad to serve the entire West Coast with faster shipping, better in-store access, and real face time with a growing customer base of racers, builders, and weekend renters. Now it's 1999, and we're closing out the 1900s. Y2K panic is a brewing. Limp Bizkit is somehow climbing the charts. I listened to Limp Bizkit, let's be real. We all did. But Summit Racing, they've got their own idea of a headline. Introducing the QuikStang. This was Summit's modern muscle statement piece, a 1999 Ford Mustang GT, but built the Summit way. bigger, badder, and built to tear up everything from autocross cones to quarter-mile lines. The name said it all, QuikStang. Under the hood, a 4.6-liter single overhead cam V8 naturally aspirated but beefed up with Summit catalog parts. It pushed out about 400 horsepower, not wild by today's standard, but for a street car in 1999, that's pretty good. They basically saw the QuikStang as the answer to the future of hot riding. Okay, now we're in the early 2000s and Summit Racing is not just a performance part company anymore. They're a national brand with racing presence you can't miss. Let's start at home base. In 2000 and 2002, Summit added on to their Talmadge, Ohio headquarters, expanding the already huge 96,000 square foot facility to accommodate more warehouse space, more tech support, and more customer service infrastructure. And while things were growing at home, Summit was also stepping into the biggest stage of drag racing. They became the title sponsor of Greg Anderson's NHRA Pro Stock team, and soon after that, Jason Line would join the lineup. Lineup? All right. This wasn't just a logo on a car deal. Summit was now backing teams that were gunning for national championships. By 2004, the red, white, and blue Summit Racing equipment livery was a staple in the pro stock ranks. They were winning races and putting the Summit name on national TV, not in the classifieds, but on the podium. They also continued expanding their support of sportsman racers, maintaining a direct link to the everyday enthusiast who made Summit what it was in the first place. So it's 2006 and Summit Racing is already coast to coast, but they're not done yet. They've got Ohio, they've got Nevada. Now it's time to make some noise down south. Enter McDonough, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. That year, Summit opened their third major facility, a massive new location strategically placed to serve racers, hot rodders, and weekend renters all across the Southeast. And this wasn't some tiny outpost. The McDonough facility covered over 250,000 square feet. That's showroom, warehouse, distribution center, offices, all built with one mission: get parts to the South faster and better than ever. While they were doing that, Jason Line wins his first NHRA championship, driving the KB Summit Racing Pontiac GTO. Jason racked up 8 wins, 13 final round appearances, and a total of 1,070 points, enough to secure his first ever NHRA Pro Stock Championship in 2006. What made it even sweeter? He did it as a part of the same team that just helped Greg Anderson build a legacy. It proved that Summit Racing wasn't just backing one guy, they were building a dynasty. Alright, we're in 2007 now. Summit Racing is making moves. First up, let's talk Norwalk. That year, Summit Racing signed a deal that gave them naming rights to the legendary Norwalk Race Park, one of the most beloved drag strips in the Midwest. And just like that, the track became Summit Racing Equipment Motorsports Park. Now, if you're from Ohio or anywhere within towing distance, you already know Norwalk wasn't just a drag strip. It was a summer destination. It had character, charm, dollar ice cream, and burnouts that echoed off Lake Erie. But wait, they weren't done. Later that same year, Summit also acquired Genuine Hot Rod Hardware, a lifestyle brand that sold hot rod themed apparel, garage gear like signs, clocks, stools. This was Summit leaning into hot rod culture, not just performance parts. They weren't just selling you tools, they were selling the identity, the feel of a garage on a Saturday afternoon, the vibe of the open road, and the smell of race gas in the air. By the end of 2007, Summit had a new Southern distribution center, a nationally recognized drag strip, and a lifestyle brand that fit perfectly in your garage, man cave, or enclosed trailer. They weren't just a parts company anymore. They were becoming a full-blown automotive lifestyle empire. So it's 2008. Summit Racing has officially been in the game for 40 years. Whoop whoop. Throughout 2008, they hosted special events at their retail stores and Summer Motorsports Park. Anniversary sales and giveaways, and a flood of magazine features, social posts, and catalog call-outs reminding everyone just how far they had come. You could also get this sweet leather jacket to celebrate the anniversary. So yeah, 2008 was a celebration, but it was also a reminder that Summit Racing was just getting warmed up. By the mid-2010s, Summit Racing's catalog wasn't just printed anymore, it was clickable. Their website exploded in traffic, mobile ordering became the norm, and they rolled out more tech support and installation guides online. They also leaned into YouTube, how-to content, social media, and online order tracking, making them one of the most user-friendly part suppliers in the game. Jason Line and Greg Anderson are still killing the game in drag racing. In 2012, Summit Racing continues to expand its reach by offering aftermarket and replacement parts for sport and utility ATVs, UTVs, dirt bikes, and street bikes. The 2010s are for rapid expansion, and this is even evident in their newest location in Arlington, Texas. In 2017, the 32,000 square foot retail superstore and a 750,000 square foot distribution center, Summit Racing's largest, opens for business. 'Cause everything's bigger in Texas. In 2018, they celebrate their 50th anniversary and branch their sponsorship into Formula Drift, which, if you think about it, is kind of crazy. They're stretching out and trying to make a name for themselves in a series that is heavy with JDM cars and enthusiasts. All right, now we're in the 2020s, and once again, the world changes. The pandemic hits, supply chains get weird, shipping delays are the norm, and yet Summit Racing keeps delivering. They double down on digital, keeping their phone staff, keeping tech support rolling. Also, one of the biggest shifts of the decade, trucks. Summit saw it happening and leaned all the way in. They expanded their trucks part lineup to include lifts, wheels, and lighting, and off-road gear like winches, rooftop tents, you name it. Restoration parts for old school pickups and full-on performance upgrades for late model trucks and SUVs. They build multiple trucks and Jeeps that showcase parts straight off the shelves, including a 2021 Dodge Ram 1500 quad cab with suspension and performance upgrades, off-road lights, bumpers, steps, and a winch. A 2021 JL Wrangler Unlimited Rubicon with an e-torque hybrid drivetrain, and a 2021 Chevy Silverado Z71 done up as an off-road and overlanding rig. Not only do we see some changes in their equipment offerings, but we see a change at the helm of the company. Paul Sergey has stepped down as CEO by 2013, and Scott Peterson steps in as CEO on January 1st, 2020. A year before that, Peterson oversaw day-to-day operations and was the COO. Paul still remains the owner of the company to this day. Summit also became the title sponsor for the Good Guys Summit Racing Nationals presented by PPG, which I've been to. It's massive. This was also when I was really starting to get more serious about my photography. I took a bunch of really bad photos and had only like 2 good ones, but whatever. During this time, they continue to lean in and adapt their online experience. They ramp up their video content, more installs, more how-tos, truck-specific marketing and product pages, and a social media presence that actually felt plugged into the culture. So here we are, decades deep into this wild ride. From a 67 Corvette in the basement under a donut shop to a multi-location powerhouse that ships thousands of parts a day, to helping racers, truck guys chase articulation angles, and street car builders chase nines on pump gas. Summit Racing equipment is still right here, still in the mix, still at the track, and they're still in the garages where dreams take shape. They've got distribution centers across the country, Ohio, Nevada, Georgia, Texas, getting parts to your door faster than ever. They're curating product line for modern platforms, everything from Everything from Hellcats and Coyotes to overlanding rig, they're supporting grassroots racing, local car shows, SEMA builds, and big league motorsports alike. And they're still investing in real tech support, real people, and real car culture. So whether you're chasing horsepower, ground clearance, quarter-mile slips, or just a cleaner engine bay, Summit Racing Equipment isn't just a parts supplier. They're part of the culture. All right, thank you for listening to this episode of Rubberneck Radio. It was a real treat for me to go down this rabbit hole with you. If you like this episode, make sure you subscribe and like on YouTube, and you can continue to check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And make sure you follow us on Instagram at rubberneck.radio and on TikTok at Rubberneck Radio. Thanks again.